Hey there, friends. We're back. I'm Nick Warren. I'm with Matt Goddard, and we're talking about accelerated digital delivery. And Matt, the other day you were saying how you were working in a big telecoms provider in the UK, running a team. It was a small team, I think you said, and your small team outperformed all the other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was an interesting story. So we had been in uh, working for this telecom company for around, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a year, something like that. I can't remember the exact time frame anyway, but I had a tap on the shoulder by the head of digital there. And they said, Matt and my Gary, who I was working with, some other people, they said, can you come into a session with us, please? And I was like, yeah, okay. What's all this about? And and they said, look, we've been looking what you've delivered in the past 12 months. You know, you've delivered this brand new goals application that was about, how to achieve your goals. You've delivered this new internet and said, like you're delivering more in your team of 5 people than we are delivering in our much bigger scrum teams. What's going on here? And I sat down and I said, explain to me what you're doing. And they said, we got all these great scrum rituals in place and we're doing this stuff and we're doing that, all the different um, rituals you need to do. So the stand ups and blah, blah, blah. And they're doing all that. And I sat there and I listened to what the designers were doing and what the developers doing and stuff like that. And then I said, we're doing similar, but the one thing that we're doing that you're not is giving our teams to focus on doing the tasks that we're asking them to do. Like our developers and our designers, they literally spend about 4 to 5 hours of their day only focused on doing design and development.
So
And
does that mean what? No interruptions? No.
no interruptions, no
Okay.
interruptions at all. So what we did is it, it's called time blocking now. There's a guy called Carl Newport who is a really fascinating sort of productivity guy.
Yeah.
He works for one of the big sort of technology universities in America. He's wrote a couple of books about slow productivity and stuff like that.
Mhm.
He's been popularizing this thing called time blocking, but it wasn't called that 10 years ago when we were doing this. And I'm not saying we did it before him or anything like that, but it's good ideas repeat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure.
so we had optimized our team productivity, our team focus, so that we had time blocked the mornings for meetings, stand ups, pull requests, uh, conversations, and stuff like that. And then we time blocked the rest of the day for purely focused time. And then we had a rule that we enforced throughout all the teams. I have a similar rule, and that is that unless it's something absolutely critically important, like systems are dying around our ears, or like something disastrous happened,
Unless the sky is falling.
unless the sky is falling down, it can wait the 4 hours until the next morning when we've
Yeah.
got essentially office hours.
Is
And
that
that's the way.
Sorry, is that something that came in? Yeah, I mean, that you come across companies that make those kind of rules. And of course, we've both run agencies and I've made those kinds of rules, but it can be very hard. I mean, particularly if, for example, clients are calling or things get interrupted. But how long did it
Yeah.
take for that to kind of bed in?
Well, we built that in when we created the teams. So that was from day one in those teams.
Okay.
So in that particular instance, it was immediate. Now, I will caveat, right, that the people that had real focus time were the people that were their jobs were about production. So it was the
Mhm.
designers, it was the developers, right? People like me who were more sort of product. We have focus time. We had focus time for our work, but we were more. Our office hours were longer to accommodate those interruptions, right?
Okay.
So if a stakeholder needed to talk about a product as decision, then they could talk to me or one of the other product owners about that when they needed to.
Okay.
But actually, a product owner. Oh my god, I'm going to get so slated for this. A product owner is a um, it's a enabling role within a delivery team, right?
Yeah.
Your job as a product owner is to ensure that the people that are doing the work, the software developers, the designers, the BAs, whoever it is, have got the mechanisms that allow them to be successful.
Yeah.
And part of that work is that you are fielding the interruptions
Yeah. Yeah.
and funneling them into something which is more, well, going back to our clarity discussion we had a little while ago, that
Yeah.
you're creating the clarity around that piece so that there isn't a discovery based meetings where you're trying to get someone to get to the point of what it is you're asking them to do.
Yeah. So really, it was the the flexibility was there for the outward. I guess you'd say more outward facing roles.
Yeah.
And when you say your office hours were longer, I mean, I'm guessing you don't mean that your working day was longer. You mean that you were open to being available for conversations, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is important, what was important for us is that we created a time box in the morning where we would be able to schedule, so meetings would be scheduled. They happen whenever. So what we do is we have a block of time which we let everybody know that if you need to, if you want an impromptu chat about something, then
Yeah.
you could do that between like 10 and 11, for example. So what we do is you extend for the customer facing roles, you extend you have a time box for the scheduled meetings, and then you have a time box for the impromptu discussions. And then, you just leave it there. I mean, at the most, you're waiting 4 hours. I'd say if you were to have a mornings of interruptions and meetings and afternoons of focus time,
Yeah.
at the most, you've only got 4 hours until you can resolve it, which most people can deal with. Nothing is that important, typically.
And so like the developers who are doing the work, they would always have by the end of the morning, they would have all the things they needed. All the blockers removed so that they could do that 4 hours in the afternoon. So one of the things you have to do then is make the systems and processes that manage the questions and the answers robust enough that actually, well, like you said, it goes back to the clarity thing, doesn't it? If
Yeah.
you're clear at the end of the morning, at a minimum for what you need to do for the 4 hours in the afternoon, for that
Yeah.
amount of work, and if you do that consistently, you're sort of sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the key, right? So the morning, let's let's do a hypothetical morning, right? So you get in 9 o'clock. That's when you have your stand up with the team.
Yeah,
In your stand up, this is where one of those sort of agile rituals really do work. Well, what I tend to do is to reiterate our weekly goals, what it is we're aiming towards for, over the week.
yeah,
We review progress from yesterday, and then what we do is we look at what is up next for today. That then gives us the opportunity to create the clarity that we need to know around those today's tasks. So let's say that takes half an hour. I mean, sometimes they take longer because I think that you don't never shortchange clarity, in my opinion.
no,
Like, so let's say that takes half an hour. Then for a developer role, for example, you might say, okay, well, we're going to allocate the next hour. So 9:30 to 10:30 is going to be all about resolving the PR column, the pull request column.
hmm
Throughout on the previous day, someone may have finished a task. They then move that task into pull request. Rather than someone having to pick that up immediately and interrupt the work that they're doing, you then wait until 10:30 the next morning. You can then have a sort of a reconciliation process where everyone goes through and says, okay, what pull requests are in the chain today? Okay, we're going to go through this, this, and this. They can get resolved. That can take, takes the hour or whatever it is. But for when you finish your piece of work, it will be resolved by lunchtime the next day. So you can move on with the next step or whatever the process is. So the person that resolves the PL will move the card on, as we spoke about in the ownership
yeah,
session that we discussed last time. There may be discussions that have come out of the stand up or or points that need further discussion that you might well then schedule in from 11:30 to 12:30, 11:30 to 12, whatever it is. And that is almost like the developers' office hours where they can get together, or, the individuals can get together and have those conversations that they need to have so that they are all in a place where they can be happy that they can focus on what they're doing next. Now, the great thing is that intersects nicely with like the design team. So the design team may do a review session, but they will know that after the developers have done their pull request, they might want to do a design to developer handover for the next piece of work that's coming up. So all of those mandatory tasks, which are about creating the visibility and the clarity that you need to be successful, all get reconciled in that morning. And then that gives you absolute freedom then to focus on the things that you need to do to get that work done. Now, one of the pieces of feedback that I get on that is that, people always say to me, "Oh, but you're only allowing, time in the afternoon for people to focus on the work they're doing. That's not very efficient. You've got 4 hours of productivity essentially." Well,
Yeah.
I know for a fact that 4 hours of deep work beats 7.5 hours of broken,
Yeah.
fractured,
Yeah.
non yeah, lack of focus work, right? That is essentially how my team of 5 people managed to outperform all of the other delivery teams that were in that space.
Yeah. And what I love about this is its simplicity. And I think that goes back to a lot of what we've been talking about in these chats, is that really, in a lot of ways, accelerated digital delivery goes back to basics. It goes back to fundamentals, and it really enshrines those kind of fundamentals. And I mean, I've obviously worked with a lot of clients over the years, and very few have anything like that kind. I mean, there was that whole bubble around the 4-hour work week when,
Yeah.
you know, people, and I did it, and I'm actually, because I especially work in a room my own. But in your situation, as being one of the more outwardly focused members of that team, you had longer office hours, but outside those, were you capable of saying, I'm not looking at email, I'm not checking it out because I've
Yeah.
got focused work to do too? Because the thing
Yeah.
is, it's obviously very relevant for if you're in a delivery team, if you're a developer, if you're a designer, whatever you are, it's very relevant there. But it's relevant to all of us, isn't it?
Mm.
This ability to deliver. It's one way or another. It's what we're all paid for, right? It's
Yes.
delivering something of
Yeah.
value to somebody else.
Or whatever it is you said you were gonna do. I think 2 things, right? So firstly, it was because of the 4-hour work week, I think, probably. I mean, there's probably a dotted line from me having read that all those years ago to thinking
Yeah,
about how to create focused activity for our team. Because
yeah,
one of the things that Tim Ferriss talks a lot about in there is um, batching work, making sure that you have defined periods to do the things you need to do. And one of the things that he recommends is, for example, putting an out of office on your email constantly that
yeah,
says, like, I check my emails at like 9 o'clock in the morning and at lunchtime. I
yeah,
will respond to them within that half an hour period. Otherwise, you won't hear from me until the next period. Right?
yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
cares
yeah, yeah,
because what people like is certainty.
yeah,
If you are a client facing role and you're so busy in meetings and doing this, you'll never get around to answer email. There's nothing that's going to annoy somebody more than the fact than you not having replied at all. Whereas if they get an out of office email that says, I will check my email and I will reply to you at these times, then they have a very clear expectation in their mind about when you're going to get back to them, right?
yeah.
So
My
it's
my
that,
experience was the same. I mean, I
yeah,
did it too, even though I was running an agency, and no one really minded. Several people said, "Oh, you've been reading the 4-hour work week," because it was, obviously it's the
yeah,
big thing. But the other thing that happened was, which was interesting, I think, is that I began to get fewer and fewer emails in that time period because people know.
yeah,
I guess, I mean, it's one thing with email. Like one of the things that's changed since then, of course, is the rise of chat. There's chat in Figma, there's chat in Slack.
Yeah.
All of these messages, teams or whatever,
Yeah.
well, they've got that sense of immediacy, don't they?
Yeah. I agree. I think the truth is that some of the strategies in the 4-hour work week worked really well for a asynchronous communication world like email and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
it does not, it's a lot harder now to manage those interruptions. And one of the great, I mean, all of these tools, they do have the ability for you to mute notifications, right?
yeah,
And for you to set up reminders on them that says, I'm on focus time at the moment and I will get back to you at this time. So you can do
yeah,
it. Whereas before you had one input, one in tray,
yeah,
you now have 5 in trays. And
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
managing. If I look at all of the communication channels that I'm afflicted by now, I've got not just my company's Teams and my company's Slack. I've also got all of the instances of the client Teams or
yeah,
Slack that I'm also added to. So I think at the moment I've got at least 8 inboxes, i.e., opportunities for people to interrupt me.
yeah,
And trying to manage that is difficult, and it becomes more difficult. But it's because of that, it's even more important now to prioritize your
yeah,
focus time, your deep work time, as Carl Newport calls it. But it's important to focus, to have that focus time. And one of the things that I will say is very, very hard for people, but it's absolutely essential. And that is the ability to say no, but not just
yeah,
no, I'm not doing it. What you want to do is say no, but. So can I interrupt you, Matt? No, you can't interrupt me in the moment because I'm busy focusing. But I've got some office hours free tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So
yeah,
you're protecting your time, but
yeah,
and the other scourge is, do you remember not so long ago, people used to email you to say, I need a meeting. When are you free? And they used to schedule the meeting together, right? But you don't have that anymore. Like nobody emails to schedule a meeting. What you have is that people literally just put meetings into your diary that is suitable for them and not suitable for, and it's on their terms, not yours. There's no
yeah,
communication there.
yeah,
And I think that, I literally, these days, I just have a complete default, which is like, I just say no to everything unless I absolutely have to. Unfortunately,
yeah,
the things I absolutely have to entertain now is probably a lot bigger than it used to be when I was just a developer.
yeah, yeah.
And, uh, you know,
I think that particular problem has got worse because so many of us live in different calendars. If you have
yeah,
one calendar, you can block times out and a meeting just automatically will be refused in that time. But if
mm,
you've got
mm,
a Google calendar and an Apple calendar and a Microsoft Outlook calendar or whatever,
yeah, yeah.
much harder to think all that stuff together and
There is
create
a
something.
good solution for that. There is
Yeah.
absolutely no good solution. I've used Calendly, I've used hundreds of different syncing tools, and I
Quite
don't know what needs to happen to resolve that. I think the
well. So
important
it sounds like with you, your ability to say no to things. I mean, that is the answer. And again, you would hope that people would learn. Firstly, they would respect it. You've got a good reason for it, but also they would learn over time that there are times when Matt is free to
and
chat. There are
that's
times when Nick is free to
yeah,
chat.
yeah, absolutely. It is consistent. And ultimately it comes back again to what we've spoken about, and that is the concept of ownership.
Mm,
That if you tell somebody you're not free now, but you are free at such and such a time, then just make sure you do it and that you have that call at that time. You cannot operate in a vacuum. You have to accommodate the people around you to get what you need to do. That's what team working is all about. But tell somebody that you've only got office hours between 10 and 11, make yourself available. Don't book another meeting over the top of that slot,
yeah,
because
yeah,
all you do is erode trust. And
yeah.
then you create ambiguity, which then has an impact on the overall team performance.
Well, yeah, I think this is a nice way to bring it home, actually, because you've mentioned that. You've mentioned ownership a couple of times. And of course, one of the reasons that this is so important, we talked in the last chat about getting the team to take ownership, to take responsibility of not just their work, but the overall delivery of the project. And I think we said it right at the end. This is one of the things that really matters is we have to give
Yeah.
them the
But
space, we have to give them the opportunity, and this is how you do it, right? I mean, it's simple, not necessarily easy. Simple and easy aren't always the same thing, but it is about sticking to it till it works. It makes total sense to me, and I'd certainly recommend it to any development teams out there.
yeah, you go through bits and starts where you implement these things really hard, and then discipline wanes a little bit, and then you get back into it. But I can
Mm.
honestly, hand on my heart, say by time blocking, by looking at your day, by understanding that actually, you know what, people really only have about 4 hours of productive time in them, deep work time in them a day anyway. Understand or convince yourself that these things are true anyway, right? Convince
Mm.
yourself that you've only got 4.5 hours of productive time, that structure your day to maximize that
Yeah,
time. And it's
yeah,
not like you say, it's simple.
yeah,
Think that we have this mindset where we have to be always
yeah,
contactable, we have to be always responsive, we have to be always adaptable to other people's needs. And I think that that's not how work gets done. It can't
yeah,
be, because you need time
yeah.
to do your work.
Well, the core of it is a mindset shift, right? It's the shift between my value is dependent on how responsive I am,
Yeah.
which is how a lot of people think by default because we've got notifications going off all the time or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's shifting from that to my value is dependent on what I deliver.
Yeah.
And in order to deliver, we need to spend time focused on the work that ultimately is what's going to get us paid.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Great.
I think that people are forgiving. So they will absolutely, very few people will bat an eyelid about you creating structure for them to have a more meaningful engagement with you.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's good for everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. See you next time.
See you later. Bye.